So Aston Villa got out of Arsenal with a point, a very, very valuable point, it must be stressed. This is the first time that Villa have come back from 2 goals behind in a away league game since 2013. 52 times that they've been in that situation, but not reverse the score. They did it at the Emirates. Obviously didn't win the match, but the point almost felt like a win in the end. I was for the final, was it 7 minutes I think added time, on the edge of my seat, because I think we're all expecting the worst, and it felt like it came when Mikel Merino's shot deflected in off Kai Havertz and past Emi Martinez, but Villa were saved by VAR. Of course it was the right decision, there's no debate about it, even though I've seen some stuff on Twitter and social media, videos zoomed in, slow motion replays. Come on, it's his arm. The rules are the rules. So I don't know why anyone can debate that. If they are, of course they would be Arsenal fans. Emery was asked about it in his press conference afterwards as well. Don't think there's much to say, and Emery didn't have much to say, to be honest. He mentioned, I always respect VAR, and if you go to every press conference that that Emery takes, as I have, he'll always say straight away, I respect VAR, and I think every Villa fan is aware of that, and that hasn't changed today, and it didn't change when, as Emery said, when Villa should have had a penalty in Nottingham Forest, and that won't be the main topic of what I'm going to talk about here. It will, however, be at the top of most of the coverage that you'll see elsewhere, probably, because of course it's a big talking point. Arsenal have dropped points when it seemed that Liverpool might, and in the end they didn't. So actually Arsenal have dropped even further away from first place Liverpool at the moment. But Villa, for them to go to Arsenal, I think everyone thought, as I mentioned previously in the pre-match podcast that we did on Friday, this was something of a free hit really for Villa. They could go to Arsenal without any fear, and I think they did that. There was, before Martinelli scored, and I'll get to it, but before that wasn't really much for Arsenal to shout about. Villa as well, I think they probably had the better of the chances, to be perfectly honest. Ian Maatsen coming onto his left side inside the box, having a shot on goal, that was a good opportunity. Ollie Watkins trying to lob David Raya, didn't quite get his effort right, and then he had another opportunity after being played in as well. So Villa, I think, gave a good count of themselves for 35 minutes, but then one ball into the box, and unfortunately Ian Maatsen switches off, doesn't see or isn't aware of Martinelli coming across him. They then open the scoring Arsenal, and it was a real shame to be behind at the break, considering I think, to be fair, how well Villa had contained Arsenal. This was always going to be a difficult game, of course. We're still playing the second best team in England, a side who are also above Villa in the Champions League, let's not forget too. So Arsenal, for all the kind of criticism that comes their way about how they play and set plays, this, that and the other, still a very, very strong side. And in fact, no one has beaten Arsenal at the Emirates since Villa did back in April, so that shows what a mammoth task Villa still had to win on Saturday night. So they did essentially the second best thing in drawing, and in the manner that they did it, as I said earlier, it feels like they've won it almost. And I'll get to it now quickly, that I just think this point is something that they can, that it shows that they are building away from home. The win at Goodison, although as I said after that one, that it's against a side who, if you are going to keep a clean sheet away from home, it's going to be against Everton, and Villa did that. But then going to Arsenal, it's another, it's a completely different level of opposition, and Villa have not won the game but shown character. So to get 4 points out of those two games in the circumstances as well, be it that David Moyes has just been appointed, the kind of background behind that, returning to Everton, and the lift that they would have had, Villa did very well to kind of quash all of that kind of excitement and buzz of Goodison. Win there, then go to Arsenal, but be 2-0 down and then come back. I think it speaks volumes of where this Villa side are. in terms of their mentality. They know that they had underperformed away from home in the 5 games before Everton, losing them. So hopefully they have turned a corner now, and we will see that when they go to Wolves, a place that I don't think Villa have won at for a very, very long time now in the Premier League. Of course, West Ham next weekend. But it does feel like they are back on track. That's now 2 defeats in 11 and more than enough wins in that spell as well. 5 matches unbeaten for Villa. And I was looking at the results earlier, and actually I think the run of form that they went on was maybe, again, we said at the time that they had sort of struggled to really impress Villa. But actually the results that they were getting were fantastic, and maybe we took it a bit for granted because then they went on a poor run of form. Now it looks like they're getting back into that vein. And I spoke after the game against Everton that now you're looking at a Newcastle and Chelsea and different teams that are around Villa. A lot of those sides have fluctuated between doing very well to doing not very well. Look at Newcastle, for example. They lose 4-1 at home to Bournemouth. That's a side who, of course, Villa were seconds away from beating, and they had 2 strikers in their squad. They didn't when they played Newcastle. So it's all about concentrating on yourselves, and Villa right now are in touching distance of that top 4, and that's quite remarkable considering the noise. I think that's fair to say, the noise around what's happening this season. I think you can kind of bottle that into, or kind of, it'll kind of, you can say something similar essentially about Ollie Watkins. This is the kind of point I try to get to in a written piece that I'll be publishing. He's now in double figures. He's closing in on Gabby's all-time Premier League goal scoring record for Villa. But I don't really recall much positivity being said about him. If anything, it's always been a negative angle of, oh, we should have taken this chance, and he's missed more big chances than other players. And while those things may be true, he's also got 10 goals now, again, in the league. And he said after the match he wants to hit 20, and he thinks this will be the season. Well, we're just over the halfway mark. Would you bet against him? I wouldn't. I certainly wouldn't. So that's a big positive, that he is again on the score sheet. I know he scores his goals in flurries, but it's a guaranteed, especially under Emery, it feels like a guarantee that if you kind of fast forward to the end of the season, he will have 15 plus goals. And what a position Villa are in to have that, plus of course John Duran, one of the most exciting young prospects in Europe in his position up front. So Villa are very well stocked going forward. Defensively, it was a shame to see him concede the 2 goals that they did today. Both avoidable, both from Trossard crosses. The first one, of course, Maatsen switches off. The second one, Villa should have dealt with better again. But you're always going to look for those places that you can improve on. I think it's just worth kind of painting a positive picture of what Villa have done in the last few weeks, especially after going to Newcastle, losing 3-0, and where they were mentally. Sorry, guys. And then afterwards, coming back from that position and where you would have been mentally as well. I think it's really important to, just say, recognise where they were and where they are now, and how quickly things can change. That was Boxing Day a few weeks ago. Now, the picture looks a lot brighter for Villa, who go to Monaco. Monday night. They play on Tuesday. Of course, that's a bit of a... it's going to be different in terms of now it's the league phase in the Champions League compared to the kind of bread and butter of the Premier League. Villa will be playing a side who are struggling, similar in a way to Leipzig, not in terms of how they're doing in the league phase. Leipzig had lost all their games before they played Villa and then lost the match, obviously against Unai Emery's side, but Monaco just lost to the bottom side in Ligue 1, Montpellier, and have struggled for form in recent weeks. So that'll be interesting, a good opportunity for them to get another win under their belts. And then, as I mentioned earlier, playing West Ham at the weekend without Emery on the touchline. Just a kind of quick note on that. I'm sure everyone's seen it by now, but he kicks the ball back into play, and that is something that he didn't feel he was warranted, that should have warranted another yellow card. Of course, his 3rd of the season, so he will now he won't be on the touchline for the West Ham match, which is a shame, but we'll see how Villa can cope with that. It's another test for them to overcome without being too deep about it. Of course, they played West Ham in the FA Cup, and they've not had the best start under Graham Potter either. So if you look at the fixtures that Villa have coming up, as I say, drawing to Arsenal is obviously a brilliant result anyway, but in how they've done it, I think that breeds a lot of confidence. But now Villa have 3 home matches in 4 against West Ham and Ipswich and Chelsea. Ipswich and Chelsea coming back to back. Obviously trip to Wolves before the match against Ipswich and West Ham. Wolves is after Celtic as well, so that'll be interesting. But it's nice that Villa have got those home matches to come. They're banked, they are ready and waiting for them, which is good because their home record this season has actually been very good. Although you can look at matches in, Man United, Bournemouth, Palace, Brighton, disappointing results in a way. But then if Villa had won those matches, they'd probably be nearly top of the league. So again, it's all taking it with a pinch of salt as we go. We're just over halfway through the season. Villa are looking strong in the Champions League, have a great opportunity to put themselves in an even better position to then go on to get the top 8, which removes those 2 playoff games. And in the Premier League, they're going very well, in my opinion. Again, could be better, but we're it was a fine line between being essentially a perfect scenario that you would have absolutely have taken at the start of the season to being something where you're looking at the negatives and thinking, we could have got something there and something here. I think you just have to judge this as a season where Villa have got huge challenges in terms of the players that they have to sell in the summer, and then in the Champions League, so bedding in new players. They've obviously had, like any other team, injuries along the way. But a lot of their competitors as well don't play in Europe. So I think it's worth, again, kind of laying that context out that Villa are having, I think, actually a very, very good season compared to where I think a lot of people would have placed them in terms of how far away they may be from the top 4. In fact, it's a couple of points. Their actual league position of, in the top 8, I don't think people will be surprised by. I think others would have thought teams would have pulled away from them by now, i.e. City, Chelsea, even a Newcastle potentially. I tipped them to finish 4th, Newcastle, and they may do that. And there's obviously teams there surprised as well. Bournemouth, Nottingham Forest going well, but a lot of those teams don't play in Europe. Villa are, so maybe that'll catch up with them in the second half of the season, but we'll wait and see. As I mentioned just then, the fixtures coming up are favourable, but of course we all know that no game in the Premier League is a guarantee, but then it's almost exciting, I think anyway, that you have those home matches against Newcastle, Chelsea, Forest as well to come in the second half of the campaign. And then if you are within touching distance those teams like Villa are now, that's an opportunity to then overtake those sides who will be looking over their shoulder at that point and thinking, well, we've occupied 4th and 5th or whatever it may be for the duration of the campaign, like Villa were last season. But then if you've got a team that's scrapping beneath you to get those points, that's a really difficult position to be in, and that will test the mentality of those sides and those players. Villa have been there and done it for 2 years now. They got to the Conference League when no one expected them to, did it in the Champions League too, to hold on last season. So I think they are really well prepared. Of course, transfer window as well, that closes relatively soon. Villa are making some strong additions, exciting additions, and I think they've had a good window so far, replacing Philogene for Daniel Marlon for a similar fee. And their right backs coming in to add more competition. Villa also want to sign, of course, a centre back, and Joe Carse will likely leave. That's all the information as of now, as I'm walking back home. So we'll wait to see how that develops. But to kind of cap us all off, a fantastic point in the capital at Arsenal. And lots of optimism, I feel, after a few difficult weeks over the course of December, end of November into December. It feels like Villa really have turned over, a new page as such for the new year. And they are, at least at the moment, looking like that they are, back on track, back to where we thought or where we hoped they'd be, at the start of the season. And lots to look forward to in the coming weeks and months.